Limb development. The limb buds appear toward the end of the 4th week of development as small elevations on the ventrolateral wall of the embryo. The upper limb buds are visible between day 24 to 26, and the lower limb buds appear about 2 days later. Each limb bud consists of a core of mesenchyme derived from the lateral mesoderm and covered by ectoderm. The ectodermal cells at the distal end of the limb bud proliferate to form the apical ectodermal ridge, AER, a highly specialized signaling center. During the 5th week, interaction of the apical ectodermal ridge with the underlying mesenchyme causes proliferation of the mesenchyme. The limb bud elongates, and a week later it flattens to become paddle-shaped hand and foot plates. By the end of the 6th week, the mesenchyme in the hand plate condenses to form digital rays. Shortly after, toe buds or digital rays are formed in the foot plate. The apical ectodermal ridge induces bone formation in the digital rays. Apoptosis, programmed cell death, occurs in the mesenchyme between the digits. Observe the notches between the digital rays and the formation of fingers and toes. As the limb bud elongates in a proximo-distal axis, it forms cranial and caudal borders and dorsal and ventral surfaces. Mesenchymal cells aggregate at the posterior margin of the limb bud, forming a zone of polarizing activity which influences patterning of the limb. The mesenchyme in the limb bud gives rise to bones, ligaments, and blood vessels. From the somites, myogenic precursor cells migrate into the limb buds and form muscles, which then separate into dorsal extensor and ventral flexor compartments. Let us look at the ventral aspect of the 5-week-old embryo. The thumb and the large toe are on the border of the limb. During development, the upper and lower limbs rotate in opposite directions along the proximo-distal axis. The upper limbs rotate laterally, while the lower limbs rotate medially. As a result of this rotation, the future elbows point dorsally and the extensor muscles are on the lateral and posterior aspects. Similarly, the future knees face ventrally and the extensor muscles are located on the anterior aspect of the lower limb. The large toe is located medial to the long axis of the lower limb. During the 5th week of development, peripheral nerves grow into the limb buds. A dermatome is the area of skin supplied by a single spinal nerve. The spinal nerves are distributed segmentally as dermatomal patterns. However, limb rotation affects the initial distribution of sensory innervation of the skin. The animation shows the spinal cord levels that contribute spinal nerves to the limb buds in a 5-week-old embryo. Observe that the distribution pattern is established in both upper and lower limbs. An orderly sequence of distribution of innervation is recognizable after birth, although adjacent dermatomes may overlap.